Hey guys, I'm Austin and I'm here to teach you some things about chess. Chess is a pretty old game. That means you can play it with your grandparents or you can even play it with your friends. It doesn't really matter because everyone likes chess. So, if you've played chess before, you might have noticed something's wrong with how I have the back line of pieces set up. That's because it's wrong. So first things first, this piece is called the rook and it goes on the farthest corner on both sides. So let's go ahead and move that. That one's already in place. Okay, next up is the horse, or the knight. It goes next to the rook, so that on both sides. So we will flip those real quick. And then since we flipped those, the bishops are now in place. They go next to the horses and next to these two special pieces. This one is called the king. The king goes on the white on its opposite color. So since this one's the black one, it goes on the white square. And this is the queen. Queen always goes on her color. So the queen goes on the black square of this side. And then there's also these pieces called pawns. There should be 8 of them, and they'll go in front of every piece directly in front of it in each square. Alright, so now I'm going to show you what each of these pieces do. So the king can move any direction, so it can move from up one, diagonal one, to the side one, down one, but it can only move one square at a time. And it also has some other stipulations. It cannot move to where another piece can take it. Next up is the queen. The queen's really cool because like the king, it can move in any direction, one square, but instead of just moving one square, it can move in a straight line as far as it can. And it makes it one of the better, most important pieces on the board that you want to watch for. Now that I've fixed the queen, next we're going to talk about the bishop. The bishop, like the queen, can move diagonally as far as it wants, but it cannot move side to side. So you can go all the way over here, but you can't go onto the black square if it's on the white square to begin with. Next up is a very special piece. It's the knight. So the knight has a very special characteristic. So the knight can move in an L shape. So you go 1, 2, and then left or right 1. And you can do that to the side, and then up and down 1. Down 1, 2, left, right. And also, a fun fact about the knight is, it's the only piece on the board that can jump over other pieces. So it can go through them, basically. And for our final 2 pieces, we'll be talking about the rook and the pawn. The rook is somewhat like the queen. It can move in straight lines as far as it wants. So, and it will capture anything in its path. And now the pawn. The pawn, at the very beginning, on its first move, it can move 2 spaces. And after that, it can only move 1 after that. And they can never move backwards. Another special piece about the pawn is it must attack diagonally instead of straight ahead. Now that I've gone over some of the basic movements of chess, we can start on some more advanced topics like castling, queenside castling, and en passant. So first up, we have castling. So castling can only be done when there's nothing in between the rook and the king, and doing so will not put the king in danger at any time. So there's nothing that can take this piece or this square at any point in time. So once you've determined that, you can move your king to the white square next to the rook, and the rook gets transferred over to the other side next to the king. Alright, so next up is the queenside castle. So like the kingside castle, it's pretty similar, except for there's 3 squares instead of 2. And again, you have the same rules. Neither of these pieces can move, and they can't be taken at any point in time during the movement of them. So for the queenside castle, we move the king 1, 2 space over, and then we have the rook jump all the way over right next to him, right there. So the en passant. First things first is, remember how I said pawns are special? On the very first turn, they can move 2 squares forward. But while they're moving 2 squares forward, they're vulnerable because they pass through both of these squares on the same time. So when you take it, you can take it on the square behind the pawn with any of the enemy pieces, and you'll lose that pawn. And that is the en passant. So this has been our chess refresher or learning today. If you've played before or you're brand new, I hope you have a wonderful time playing chess as much as I do.